Welcome back to Through the Leadership Lens, a podcast presented by the Women of Propane Council, where bold voices, big ideas, brilliant guests in the propane industry take center stage. I am Freddie Ridler, and we're diving deep into leadership that inspires, empowers, and transforms. But this episode, we have a little bit of a twist. But before we get to that twist, let me introduce my incredible host, the one and only Miss Jessica Balderston.
Thank you, Freddie. We're really excited to have Erin Vandermore joining us today. She's the founder and CEO of Mind Circuit, as well as a licensed clinical mental health counselor and a former educator with nearly 20 years of experience across mental health, education, and leadership. What we love about Erin's work is how she takes really complex concepts and turns them into practical tools people can actually use, whether that's in their personal life or as leaders. Erin, before we get started, can you tell us a little bit about what Mind Circuit is and how it's helpful to our listeners?
Sure. So, Mind Circuit is my attempt on trying to take complex neuroscience of how we process information and make it a usable tool that we can just use on our app or as like an analog version I have as an intervention. So what the app does is it allows you to use bilateral stimulation, right, left, to activate your nervous system to tell it it's calm so we can process what we need to process.
I actually downloaded it and I've been playing around with it quite a bit. And it's funny how it'll say you need to take a break or you need to play a game or you need to floss your brain. I'm like, what? So my phone and my watch tell me throughout the day. And then I do the little activities. And you're right. You get done, you're like, I forgot what I was even working on right now.
You need that pause. You need that break throughout the day. It helps you to show up better for yourself and others. But we just don't do that.
Yeah, it's nice having those reminders for sure. Otherwise, like you said, we're kind of just in it and it's hard getting out and kind of
Yes.
realizing you do need that break.
Yes. And when you take the break, you're so much better for it.
Yes, 100%. Erin, something that we always ask our podcast reviewers is we start with a simple question. What does leadership mean to you and how has it changed over the years?
I would say leadership for me is making sure that they're within my team or my organization or however I'm approaching it, that there's enough safety, trust, and clarity so people can do their best work, show up their best, because things get difficult. We have to have difficult conversations sometimes. And I'm not going to get the best version of the person in front of me if they don't feel safe, if they don't feel heard, if they think something's going to be used against them, and if they don't truly understand what it is we're trying to solve or understand, they're not going to be able to then show up and answer that. So for me is really leadership, and how I've changed it throughout the years is making sure that everybody feels together as a group. We're a team. And recognizing that the leader doesn't always have to have all the answers. And that's okay.
I'm going to touch on, so I wrote down safety, trust, and clarity. And most of our podcast, trust and clarity come up. Be clear what you're trying to do and trust that you're a good leader and you trust the people that you're leading. But the word safety in the propane industry normally means propane, right? Safely handled, safely delivered, safely being used. Your safety and propane safety, I'm guessing, is not the type or the same safety. Could you just touch on a little bit what you mean about having a safe environment, not because we are a flammable product?
Well, but you could apply that to people as well. If you mess with people too much, they might explode, just like propane, right? So you have to handle people with care, with empathy, just like you would propane. It shouldn't really honestly be that different. Safety means that my nervous system knows that I'm in a good place where I'm going to be heard and we can disagree, but it's respectful, right? Safety is knowing that I have value and worth. And the only way for us to be able to share these is communication. And within propane, when you're dealing with propane, you want to communicate so you don't drop anything and have something explode. So there are a lot of similarities.
Well, just like you do with a tank, you do a yearly, bi-yearly, every 3 years safety check to make sure the tank is functioning like it should. We should do safety checks on people, checking
Yes,
in
Mhm.
once a month,
absolutely.
every
Yes.
6 months, every week, every day. What's
Yes,
your gauge set at? Are you full? Are you empty? Are you critical? Are you running on vapors? Like, my brain's going all over the place. I better stay in
yes,
focus.
you're speaking my language.
That is wild.
Absolutely. Where are you? Where is your gauge? That would be the perfect way to have that implemented within a propane environment because you all speak the same language. So you would have an understanding of what it means when somebody says they're at critical. You wouldn't have to explain. They would get it like that. And then, okay, how do we help that individual? Would be the next steps.
So I'm just spinning this whole podcast around. One thing that I think a lot of people struggle with in our particular industry is that concept of like them sticking it out and toughening it out and not sharing what they're actually feeling. They're maybe at critical, but they're telling their leadership that everything's fine. I'm not going to worry about things. How do you have somebody from a leadership aspect like recognize that about their employees, or how do you kind of make that safe space so that they are comfortable approaching a leadership in that position?
Well, I would say a lot of times it would, modeling is where I would start. If the leader is able to model and talk the talk, your, what's the word? Your employees are better able to show up and be honest and say what's going on with them. So if you have a leader who comes in and is able to share when they are going through stress, when they're dealing with anxiety, when they're a little down, when they're a little depressed, right? If they could even use those words, it helps to let individuals around you know that you're safe, that you can talk about these emotions. It gives them language too that they know is safe to use because they heard the boss say it, right? And so if the boss said it, okay, I can say it, I can approach it. I've been given this example of the verbiage and what's okay to say or not okay to say because the boss has talked about mental health. It should be like going to the dentist. If you go to the dentist, you tell everybody what's going on. I had a tooth pulled, it hurt, or they said I didn't floss, and nobody's embarrassed by that. You should go and get a mental health checkup like you do with the dentist regularly. And if they find something, you stay a little bit, you work through it, you move on.
And I know you and I talked a little bit before this podcast, Aaron, and that was one of the things that I asked you about was, and I I encourage my kids to go and see a therapist when they're going through high school, just to prep them for college life. And I know I had this hard conversation with them is, well, I'm like, hey Parker, you have allergies. You take allergy medicine. If you don't take your allergy medicine, you itch, right? Yep. Well, you got that brain itch, right? If you don't tell somebody that you're having this, if you don't feel comfortable having the conversation, then the itch never goes away. And it's okay to say like, I need to talk about this stuff. I need to talk about my mental health, and they went through the therapy, and they talked it out, and now they just were set up for conversations, those harder conversations in life where they can almost like they can self trigger like, oh, I'm starting to feel anxious, I know how to handle this now. So it's incredible. Like you said, it shouldn't be treated like any other problem. It's mental health, allergies. Like you said, you got to go to the dentist.
Our body's all interconnected. So you can't ignore a toothache. You can't ignore a sinus infection. You can't ignore if you broke your foot, right? Because it's going to impact everything else in your life. And your mental health is no different. And if you're experiencing depression or anxiety, it's like saying you have a sinus infection or a toothache. Let's figure out how to help. What tools do we need? Who do you need to talk to? I mean, if my car had issues, I'd go find a mechanic. There's there's people out there who this is their job.
or you keep driving it until it breaks down.
Yeah.
And that's just like
That
a person.
happens too. Yeah.
Yes, and then you're stranded, and it's worse
Yeah.
than what it was a month or
Yep.
two ago, right? So
Yep.
just like with car maintenance, same with humans. If we take
Yep.
care of our teeth, they're better, right? It's not like, oh my goodness, I'm losing all my teeth in my mouth. Mental health is no different. If you want your mental health to be good, there is some proactive things to do to help yourself.
So getting back to somewhat of our scheduled podcast layout here. So Jess and I, when we do these podcasts, we like to mix in some really just kind of off the cuff questions, some fun questions, kind of loosen up the mood a little bit. So I'm going to ask you that. Then I do have another question I want to ask you. So, Erin, you said you're originally from Chicago, right? What's a Chicago habit that you still have that people notice immediately? And I think I know this one already.
Well, I'm told I have an accent. I don't hear it. Um, I beep my horn, which I guess is a big no-no. I had no idea. I say pop. I guess you're not supposed to say that. Those are the ones that come to my mind.
We're from Minnesota. It's pop to us too.
Pop.
Yeah.
I guess
Yeah.
everyone listening right now will say you all have funny accents. So
Yeah.
hey.
I get told that. I just don't hear it.
So my question in this one, and this is kind of going back to a little bit what we already talked about, but in the propane world, there can be a stigma around mental health. We kind of talked about that whole mental health. It's not a lot of people like to talk about it. But for the viewers and the listeners right now that want to approach their manager or their boss or their leader, what's a piece of advice you would tell them? Like if they're listening to this right now saying, I do want to talk to my leader, but how do I take that next step? What would you recommend of what step is that to kind of get to that point?
I would say if you are struggling and you need to have a conversation with someone in leadership about mental health, I would first give yourself a moment to pause and think about what is it that you're hoping to achieve or you're hoping to hear? What is it that you want to have happen? What do you want to come out of the conversation? That way you feel better prepared when you're in the conversation to answer certain questions or bring up certain topics because you have a better sense of what it is that you're hoping they'll be open to or they'll help with. If you just walk in and go, I have anxiety, I mean, that doesn't leave a lot for the other person to be able to dialogue with you. You're not telling them what you need or how you need it. You're just throwing something at them. And you wouldn't do that if you had a toothache where you broke your foot. You would walk in and say, I need this accommodation, or I'm going to be out this day for a procedure, or I'm going to need somebody to help me open doors, like simple things, right? But we would be able to walk in to the conversation knowing what it is we need help with, how to ask for it, and how you want the individual to show up. That'll make the conversation a lot easier for you. And it'll also be able to set the other person up to feel receptive because you're telling them what it is that's going on and you're telling them how they can help or not, right? You're giving them that piece. You're not just throwing it at them, having them come up with magic, right? So it makes the person not feel as defensive or on guard because they know how to show up.
Sure. That makes complete sense. So kind of talking it through in your head and saying, what do I really need from this conversation? And then if the conversation starts veering, you keep that thought in your head and say, let's get it back on track. Erin, my fun question is, what is one misconception people have about therapy or counselors that you'd love to correct in 30 seconds?
You don't lay on couches, and I don't just sit there asking, and how does that make you feel? And how does that make you feel? That is not what's supposed to happen. So if that's happening, please go find a different therapist.
We should have been laying on a couch for this podcast, Jess.
We should have. Oh, we should have started it like that, Freddie. Maybe some AI can do a fun picture for us, the thumbnail. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's crazy. People still think that because they probably never experienced it. So that's what they've seen throughout growing up and everything.
Yes, or that it has to be so extreme that you only seek out mental health if you're about to, for lack of a better term, have a breakdown or something.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
And just like any health within your body, eyes, dentists, ears, your bones, please don't wait until you're about to keel over and die. Come to us, when you start to notice the symptoms, not when they're so extreme that you're at critical.
What are some of those symptoms, Erin, for somebody to kind of recognize about themselves? How do they, if they've never been to a therapist before, think like, oh, I might need, or I should maybe seek out help? Like, what are some of those key things that they might think that in their mind?
Well, there's a wide variety here. I always like to use the analogy of like an Olympic athlete. They are always going for additional coaching. They are never saying, I'm done. I have nothing more to learn. They are always open to critiques and open to trying different things and learning different things. Why? Because they know they can't do it alone. And there's a perception that they're never going to be able to have. They can't watch themselves swim. They can't watch their technique. Now, maybe they could video it, tape it, but they're going to be biased, right? So having that unbiased coach there to help you is always a benefit. And so an Olympic athlete feels they still need a coach, well, then I certainly, as Joe Schmo, should have a therapist, a coach, someone to help guide me. So I would say you don't have to have certain symptoms to start. You could just go in for like a check-in. This is my life. This is what's going on. I have some of these stressors. And then you have an unbiased opinion view from someone and ask you questions you wouldn't have thought of. And it forces you to say things out loud so you can catch it. Now, if you are starting to not feel like yourself, then absolutely seek a therapist. And not like yourself could be you're not sleeping well or you're sleeping too much. You're having lots of stomach issues. A lot of times, anxiety will show up in the body in somatic, where they'll get headaches. They get stomach aches. They're using their illness to constantly miss events and things like that. That would tell me there's something more going on and we need to take a look at it.
Yes, so this is leading me into another question. You keep finishing answering, and then it just builds more questions. So we talked about like if I was wanting to talk to my leader or supervisor or manager about mental health. Now, what happens if you're a leader, supervisor, manager, where you notice that somebody on your team is acting a little strange, very quiet, kind of down on themselves? What's a proper way to approach them without scaring them away, without saying, "Hey, you look like you're depressed today"? I mean, like, how do you have that tough conversation with somebody that? Because I mean, when you're talking about these symptoms, you could see them, and I'm sure everyone that's watching this, viewing it, whether they're listening or seeing it, I'm sure they can go back in the last year, and I bet they've ran across somebody at least once, which is probably a lot more than that, that did have a bad day and they thought to themselves, what can I do to help out? And what would you tell that person if they saw one of those symptoms you said right now? Like, how do you approach that conversation, that hard conversation?
So if I saw it as a fellow coworker, I would just check in with the person and say, how you doing? And I would call out, you look a little down today, or you look a little stressed out. I would name what the feeling is that I think I'm seeing so that that person can either correct me if I'm incorrect, or they can say yes, and they now have the verbiage to say what they're feeling. If I was the boss, first of all, this is why it's so important to make sure that you have that trust built up, that they feel safe with you so that they can have these conversations. Because if I never talk about this stuff and I suddenly bring it up to you, you're going to be a little defensive and you're going to be put off because this is not the normal language you're used to hearing from me. So it's important to norm some of this language ahead of time as a leader so that if I do notice someone they come in, they seem a little down, or their clothes are disheveled more than they used to be. They're not as on during meetings. Me taking them aside and saying, "Hey, I've noticed you're not quite you." And saying not you is not making them suddenly jump and think, "Oh, I'm not being good or bad, or I'm too talkative or not talkative." Just saying, "I notice a difference with you." You don't have to point out the actual behavior, just you. Lets the person know that they are seeing something and that they want to be supportive. It also would be good for the leadership person to also be able to come to that conversation with the how or the what they want from the conversation, what they're offering or not offering, right?
And I love that because I hope everyone that's watching this listen to that, because a lot of our podcasts, they always, and which is good, a leadership skills listening, listening. But sometimes they need to look, because you might not listen to someone that, looks sad or depressed or anxious. You can't hear that, but you can see it. So,
No, you can see it. You can tell if somebody, did they brush their teeth or not? Are they combing their hair or not? Are they disheveled? Are they not bringing lunch? You notice when somebody's doing something that's out of the norm for them.
Yeah, I feel like it's really important too. You mentioned like being the supportive leadership position. So being there to not just say, "Hey, I noticed this thing about you, like what the fruit loop is going on," but rather than just like, "I'm here for you. I want to help. Like, please let me know what's going on," things like that. So I think that's a really good key and takeaway that you mentioned.
Thank you. No, it's important to be able to show up with what it is that you can do to support the person. Sometimes it's just saying, "I'm here to support you if you need to talk."
Erin, my next quick fun question is, what's something people think helps with stress, but in reality, it actually makes it worse?
drinking. I'm kidding.
It's true. Yeah.
It
Yep.
is true. Drinking, smoking, shoving it down, not talking
Yeah.
about it, ignoring it. You get to the critical stage, you blow up.
Yeah.
I mean, it has to go somewhere.
Yeah.
How do you feel when people say, "Oh, you'll be just fine"?
Oh my goodness. I cringe because I used to hear that. And when I was younger and didn't know better, I would say it too. Rub it off, rub some dirt on it, walk it off, just move forward. Um, you're not letting the person know that you see them, and you're not letting them know that you see that they're struggling. And so you're automatically dismissing them and not validating them with that comment. And right there is harmful. And then I'm not being curious in that moment to figure out what's going on. So if I approach it more with curiosity, I can have a better sense of what's happening, what's occurring, and maybe how can I show up.
Wonderful advice. Yes. Erin, I'm going to switch gears just a little bit. Work-life boundaries have been a hot topic for many, many years, and I feel like that has changed over the years. That home life is now coming through the doors into their work life. How should leaders and teams handle the reality in a healthy way while still keeping the work effective and safe?
That's a very good question. And I have noticed that as well as a therapist. People not being able to concentrate on their job because home life is creeping in. And what that tells me is that they don't have the support system that they need to be able to keep the things at home or have the communication at home or the conflict resolution at home, or they don't have the stress reliever at home, right? There's something within the home environment that they need more of or less of. And so you're not going to figure that out on your own. It's just a mess in your head. You need to verbalize it to someone, talk about it, get it out to figure out, "Oh, I used to do this when I got home and that made me feel better. I stopped doing that. Oh, okay. Now I see why it's coming in." There's nothing wrong, again, if you as a leader have created trust and safety to have those conversations with someone. I noticed your phone's going off a lot lately. You're getting a lot of text messages. You seem distracted. How can I help? What can I provide? Or who do you need to go talk to? Sometimes it sounds funny, but we need to give each other permission.
I love it because I think home support is as just important as work support. And I know Jess and I have these conversations all the time, and it's I think when you have that support at home, it's easier to leave home life at home. And when you have a really good support system at your job, you can leave the job stuff at the job to go home. And I'm glad you touched on that because I know with today's world, it is becoming a blended um, lifestyle. And I might just be the older person now in the older generation, but like I see a lot of it, and I see a lot of people bringing a lot of stuff to work to talk about it with their colleagues, because sometimes they're, at least they're talking about these things. But I feel like, what's the resolution in that? Like, I feel like some of these conversations I'm hearing, you should be having these conversations at home.
Yes, they should, but they don't have that unbiased, unfiltered person like a therapist, a coach, who could tell them that they need to have that conversation at home. And that is the beauty of mental health, is that I, as your therapist, I can coach you through these life situations, but I can also tell you when you need to step up, or you need to show up, or you need to get over something already, or you need to go have that conversation, right? Like sometimes you just need someone to tell you to rip the band-aid off. And I can do that because I have no skin in the game. I'm just what is best for you, what is going to help you in the moment.
That's awesome. So one of the things I wrote down before, actually, I have fun questions. I better get back to one of those. I'm all over the place with this one. I feel like we have a free session with you right now.
Yeah,
So
it does
I
feel like
better,
that.
I better
I
get back to the
love these
podcast.
conversations. I love talking about mental health and making it easier to like digest, because we have such a marketing problem in mental health. We do not
Yeah,
make it easy to understand. We
Yes.
don't market it in a way that is accessible to people, and it really needs to be.
okay, I'm going to ask a question on that, but my fun question is, I like this one. So in the propane industry, we always ask propane leaders, what do they keep in the trunk of their car? As a mental health coach, what do you keep in your trunk of your vehicle?
Like my real trunk or my pretend trunk?
Well, it could be a mindset tool belt, right?
Okay.
So
Because
you answer whatever way you want to answer
Yeah,
that one.
I like
I
both.
go for both.
well, my answer for my actual car is not very therapeutic. It's a bat, because I'm from Chicago.
Oh
So
my goodness.
I carry a baseball bat. I can't help it. It's what I learned growing up. Um, Mentally, a toolbox, what's in my trunk. For me, I have learned the quickest way to get out of my head is to force myself outside. So it's knowing what are the top three things that help me during very stressful moments, so that I don't have to try and sit there and think. I have a top three list always that I know I can go do regardless of what's going on. So go outside, which makes me leave the environment, and that always helps to physically move away from whatever the stress is. I will force myself to listen to birds, because it forces me to pay attention to what I'm hearing and I'm not running anything in my head. And the other one is to go get water, because if I'm drinking water, I can't respond quick, which is good because I don't want to respond with urgency or being reactive, right? So if I physically am drinking water, I physically can't talk. And those are like my three quick go tos, that where if I feel overwhelmed in a moment or I feel really angry in a moment, I'll go do one of those three, because I just have those right off the top of my head. And I can always do at least one of them.
Wow. I personally, when I'm in that mindset of like angry, upset, on edge, like I remind myself, just breathe or take a moment. I like though the three things because the drinking the water, go listen to the because you're stepping away from the situation. Because if you just breathe, well, I'm breathe. Sometimes I'm like I'm breathing every damn fine, like it's fine. I know how to breathe already. But like I love that you have three things. And like you said those, like you do use those three things.
Oh, I
I
have
think that's
teenagers.
amazing.
I need those three things.
Back to back to back.
Yes, absolutely.
That's
I have. And I will tell my teenagers, I'll say, I need a moment. I'm going to step outside. Or I'll say, hold that thought. I need a glass of water. They don't know that I'm getting overwhelmed, right? But I'm giving myself the permission to take the break that I need because I don't want to just react out of that big emotion because I know I'm going to regret it later.
Switching gears a little bit more, I have a really fun question. If Mind Circuit had a theme song, what would it be?
It sounds weird, but the first thing that came to mind is the Bob the Builder song because Mind Circuit's all about like building connections and getting things to work and figuring out what tools needed. And it can always be something a little different. So that psychological flexibility is really key with Mind Circuit in my mind, is recognizing you need the pause so that you can figure out what do I need to do next or how to approach whatever's going on. We need that physical pause.
Yes. Now I'm going to have Bob the Builder stuck in
I
my
can
head the
hear it.
rest of the
I can
afternoon.
hear it.
Yep. It's the
You can
perfect
tell I'm
answer.
a parent.
Amazing. Thanks, Erin. Erin, I think a lot of leaders struggle with balancing accountability with empathy and maybe teetering from one to the other and feeling like maybe they have more of that accountability and then trying to balance that empathy as a leader. What advice would you give to them of how to balance both of those without swaying that balance between one or the other?
I think in my mind, it would be important to separate those conversations. Be able to, as a leader, have a conversation about these are the expectations. This is what you're held accountable for. This is what the conversation's going to be about, and then let them know then later we're going to have a conversation on one-on-one that's more going to talk about what's going on inside after you've had some time to digest the accountability piece, right? Because if I want someone to respond as their best self about what they're accountable for and why or why not it's working, I need them to pause and take the time to process so that they have a moment to reflect. And they're not going to do it in front of me. It's going to be a quick answer, and it's not going to necessarily be helpful either. So if I strategically make them separate and I give the person the time to process, I'll be able to have a way better conversation. And then that's where I could have that empathy piece.
Yeah, that's
Hmm.
wonderful pieces of advice, trying to keep those a little separate because then the person you're talking to doesn't get that confusing mixed signals either.
Yes. And it is confusing when you're doing accountability and empathy. It's like with kids. If you show empathy while you're trying to yell at them, it comes off weird. And so it's the here's the consequence, positive or negative, to whatever behavior it is. You're going to deal with the consequence, and then later we'll talk about it. No different.
I love it. I'm there's so many notes, so many things I want to talk to Jess about after this podcast. Excited to share this with everyone. I have one more topic I want to talk about, and then I'll leave Jess do her thing. But we haven't touched on virtual yet. And it's a virtual world now. The propane industry, there's a lot more in person because drivers, service techs, people need to be in the office, taking calls, or people walking in, pay their bills, whatnot, order propane. But there is still remote workers. There's still remote people, and a lot of us service people, a service section in the industry. A lot of us are remote. Has that changed? I mean, that had to put some stress on your job on how do you catch people? Like, okay, for example, we talked about if Jess was having a bad day, I can see her in the office and I can go up to her and say, hey, you received a lot of texts and a lot of calls and you look a little defeated today. How do you keep an eye on those remote workers, that remote staff in your office? How do you keep an eye on them to make sure they feel included and that it's okay to approach them if they're having a bad day or anxiety or whatnot?
That's an excellent question. And it definitely, virtual has brought up this whole realm of how to navigate these situations, especially if you're not getting the social cues as much. So I always suggest to have virtual meetings so you can see the person, you can put eyes on the person so that you can get used to what their social cues are so you know if they're off. So anytime you can have virtual meetings, I think is excellent, and it's something you really should prioritize. Even if it's just a 5-minute like check-in, just so you get to see the person. So if something changes, you know that there's a change. 'Cause that's important as a leadership. As a leader, I need to know my people. And I don't, they're all remote and I don't do anything virtual with them, I don't really know them. So taking that time to do that. And then there's different like little check-in tools you can use. There's scales you can use that you can, if you feel comfortable, HR can say, yeah, you can do this weekly check-in or this monthly check-in. And if somebody comes up in the critical, this is what we're going to do to help you, right? As long as you have a conversation around it with HR, you have an agreement, everybody knows what the point is and what the actions are, people are going to be more on board and more honest too, because they know, oh, if I'm depressed, they're not going to fire me because they think I'm lazy, right? If I'm depressed, I know that I'll fill out this screener and then they're going to have me talk to someone to help me figure out what are the tools in the community, what are some things I can do, right? It doesn't equate my job being in jeopardy. And that's what a lot of people need to know.
I think you have to be transparent on that, right? You got to say, we're doing this weekly check-in, not because your job is on the line. We're doing this weekly check-in because we care about you. We want to make sure you're all right. I think people forget just that little piece of just saying, this is why we're doing it.
That's that clarity piece where you have to be very clear with what it is that you're trying to get out of that meeting. And you're very clear with what this impacts or doesn't impact.
I feel like a lot of people too, if they don't have that clarity, their mind is just going to race and probably think the worst, because that's just how our mind works sometimes. So having that clarity definitely helps in all those situations. Great pieces of advice. Erin, I have one more question, and it's something to do in our industry. Our industry can have very fluctuating seasons where you're gearing up for like a high stress season. Typically it's in the winter time because that's when everybody's just busy delivering propane. Could you talk a little bit about building your own mental health foundation, and what does that look like in real life so that you don't meet that high season in their careers or their time spans and get that burnt out feeling? So what can people do in order to prepare for something like that?
I would equate it to like right before cold season. Right before cold season, we'll start drinking more water, making sure you're getting enough sleep, enough nutrients, vitamin, maybe start taking zinc or elderberry. You will take proactive steps to make sure your body and your immune system's in a good place. Mental health is no different. So are you journaling, listening to podcasts? Are you reading, writing? Are you socializing enough? Are you in a good place at home with your family? Do you have support and tools? Do you even know what the tools are? And if you don't, there's a lot of ways to figure that out, right? And look it up. So I would say making sure that you do have tools in place ahead of time and having a good sense of who you are as a person so you know how to help yourself. What calms you? What helps you? For some people, exercise is wonderful. For other people, it's a punishment, right? So my tool could be different than your tool, but at least I have an idea of myself and what helps me. So having these conversations and forcing to say these things out loud, it helps you to discover what helps you or doesn't help you. So, again, maybe having a coach or a therapist that you meet a couple times, learn some coping skills before the busy season. You can see a therapist just for a month or two. It doesn't have to be forever. You get to choose.
There's no rules.
No, there aren't. You're the person in charge.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the reasons I created my app is I had clients who were like, I wish I could carry you around in my pocket for those quick moments, right?
Now you can.
And I'm like, I don't know how to make that happen, but I can make an app that'll force you to pause. Now, after the pause, that's where you have to figure out what is it that you need next, but at least I can help you get the pause.
It's funny. This entire conversation, I hear a lot of similarities between the propane industry and mental health, and it's funny because the whole you talk about the heating season, right? Dispatchers, service techs, they're getting ready to get the drivers back in the road. They're making sure the propane trucks are running again. They're making sure they're doing inspections to be sure they're ready to start moving high volume gas or propane. It's just like the busy season for a person. We're getting into, this is the time of year we get busy. What do we need to do on our bodies to make sure that the wheels are inflated and the windshields are ready and there's windshield fluid in there and there's full oil? You forget, you spend so much time on the business and the product that you forget to take time on yourself.
Which is really key to point out, because eventually you're going to get to the point where you're not effective at work. And so all this effort you put into the product, if you can't show up as your best self, it doesn't matter how good the product is. You're going to negatively impact it, whether you realize it or not.
I feel like I have walked away personally with so much information. It just lit a fire in me talking to you, Erin. So thank you. And I hope our listeners are feeling the same way that I am right now. So thank you so much, Erin, on such a thoughtful and insightful conversation. We definitely appreciate you taking the time to share your knowledge with us. It was a pleasure having you on Through the Leadership Lens, and we're grateful for the insights you brought to our audience. Thanks to everybody listening. We know you're walking away with something valuable from this conversation, and we'll see you next time.
And that's a wrap on this episode of Through the Leadership Lens, a podcast proudly presented by the Women in Propane Council.
If you enjoyed today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe, download, and share it with a friend or colleague.
And if you want to learn more about Women in Propane, connect with us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram,
or visit us online at www.womeninpropane.org.
I'm Freddie Ridler.
And I'm Jessica Balderston. Thanks for listening.
And keep leading with purpose and vision.